Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You can tell right now that you're not hearing the dulcet tones of our communication manager, Paul Carruthers. It is Sean Bice, the sidekick, but Paul is with me in Southern California. I am in wet and rainy Central Ohio. Paul, let's introduce you. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to today's podcast. It's always nice to have somebody on the podcast that we've never spoken to before. Actually, in my case, I've really never even spoken to him before. I know you have. You've spoken to him probably quite often, but so yeah, I'm looking forward to learning about somebody. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Carl Soltisz in a minute. It's funny, he's a little bit under the radar for a guy that goes by Super Carl, but we'll get into why he's called that. And you look at what he's done. I mean, the guy's actually been with us for the entirety of the MotoAmerica era, and he was actually in previous to this in AMA Supersport. So we'll talk about that. But before we do that, I have to go on a little bit of a rant. So, and at the same time, by the way, I'm going to promote our Discord server, which is Motorcycle, and it's doing great. Everybody should check it out and join it. We've had a lot of people be on it, and Carl, you should get on it too. But essentially what it is it's a chance for people to get on there and have conversations about everything, literally from MotoAmerica to Supercross, MotoGP, World Superbike. There's also an area for questions. You can ask questions about our series or anything in racing, or even ask questions about bike maintenance or working on a bike. And if one of us within MotoAmerica doesn't answer it, somebody else in the community will. And that's the great thing about Discord. It's a community of people, like-minded people that all love bikes in every shape or form. And, there's discussion about King of the Baggers, all aspects of our series, the upcoming Daytona 200. But our guy, Doug, who works in our department, he's one of our social media people and videographer, and Paul's in my right-hand man for sure. He's a terrific guy, and he keeps us abreast of a lot of things. So somebody on Discord made a comment about the fact that, come to think of it, Sean does talk a lot about a lot of the riders' mothers, and I'm going to address it today because. And this is one of these things. I took Shakespeare in college, so I know of the term "methinks thou doth protest too much." But I'm gonna go out there and also say, in the line of "I'm not crying, you're crying," I'm gonna say, "I'm not creepy, you guys are creepy," because any of these moms that I love and talk about, they to their face, they have no problem with me. And I want to let you guys know, yes, I love most of the moms in the MotoAmerica paddock. And I even love a lot of the moms that are no longer in the MotoAmerica paddock, like Cameron Bobier's mom and Garrett Gerloff's, because you get to know these families, and it really kind of underscores the fact that MotoAmerica is truly a family, and we do get to know a lot of these parents because they are so terrific about encouraging their kids to get involved in racing or helping their kids to realize their dream. And I'm speaking from the fact that my mom, when I was a kid, I started out with one of those lawnmower engine powered mini bikes and went to a motorcycle. And I look back at it and I thank her all the time that she allowed me to get involved in the sport of motorcycling, because it's defined my whole life. And now I have this dream job with MotoAmerica. But yeah, I absolutely have crushes on Christina Day, Ben Glotti's mom, and Jeanette Nassani, and Amy Dunham, and I'll go down through the list. But I'm an equal opportunity crusher, and I also have man crushes on several of the dads in the series who put their sons and daughters out there to race. Whether it's Kayla Yakov's dad Dave, or let's talk about some of the absolute man crushes I have. Ashton Yates's dad, Aaron Yates. Come on, the guy is a former Supersport champion, Superbike winner. and World Superbike guy. He's an idol of mine. And Paul Carruthers' own dad, Kel, the 1969 AMA 250 world champion on a Benelli. I have a huge crush on that dude, and I'm completely secure in my masculinity to say that I love that guy, and I love a lot of the guys in our series, just like I do the moms. So anybody that thinks that's creepy, sorry, that's on you, not on me. So that's what I have to say about that. And I know Paul questions it sometimes too, but Paul,
No.
I will tell you a quick story though. Years ago, when I first met Josh Hayes' mom, Marcia, and I'm going to go by a first name. Now I'm dropping some names right now, but Marcia and Kurt Hayes, Josh Hayes' father and mother, or mother and father in that order. She's a very attractive lady. I remember going up to Josh and saying, "Hey, you know, your wife, yikes, I'm really getting in trouble. Your mom is actually a real cool lady. She's a pretty lady too." And he goes, "Hey, you know, I've gotten into fights and people up in high school over that." And I said, "I'm just saying, I'm okay with it." So, you know, he thinks I'm creepy too, but I don't give a crap. It's fine. So I'm just going to continue being me, saying hi to all the moms and dads and thanking them for being involved in our series. So,
Sean, you're a harmless creeper. And you're an equal opportunity creeper.
Yeah, either way, I don't care.
Right? I mean, if being nice to moms is the worst thing you do, I'd sign me up.
Well, heck, we shouldn't even get into the riders' girlfriends and wives either, Paul.
No, let's move on.
We'll move on. So, you know, so let's bring in Carl Soltisz, who has been in, like I'd mentioned at the top here, he's been in our series for the entirety of it. The guy's been racing in Supersport. He actually, I think, started racing it with us in 2014, but he's been a club racer for a long time. And Carl, when we bring him in, he can correct us if we're wrong, but he actually has been involved. He's been racing a Yamaha R6 for all of this time, but this year he's going to be racing a Yamaha GSX-R, and I don't know which displacement it's going to be. And
a Yamaha GSX-R?
Did I say that?
Yep.
I gotten so worked up about my crushes. Gosh, thank you, Paul. Which
one is it?
A Suzuki GSX-R. It's either going to be a 600 or a 750, and we'll get into that later. I'm actually writing a story right now about the fact that the 750 is in fact approved for racing at Daytona, in the Daytona 200 and in Supersport with balancing, just like some of these other, the Panigale V2 and some of those. So Carl's making a switch after all this time from, and let me be clear, from a Yamaha to a Suzuki this year. And he's racing with Disrupt Racing, and they've also got support from Infinity Protection Systems. And I think that's Jesse Wilka, the team owner's company, possibly, but Carl can fill us in on that. And Carl was with Disrupt last year on his own Yamaha R6, but he's actually going to have a full prepared Suzuki for him this year. So Carl, with that huge preamble and that whole talk about man crushes and all that, how are you, Carl?
Hey, Sean. Hey, Paul. I'm doing quite well. Thanks for asking. Happy to be on the show here. Thank you guys for having me.
Are you sure?
Well, let me start by asking Carl real quick. So Carl, tell us about, you have raced the Yamaha for a long time, right? And this is kind of a big change for you, but you've tested a little this year, and it looks like Disrupt Racing is going to kind of go with Suzuki's this year. They're going to have Hayden Gillum on a Superbike and a Stock 1000, and you're going to be a premier Supersport rider on a GSX-R, one of the two, 600 or 750, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I've been on Yamaha my whole racing career. Partly because at the time when I started racing, I didn't get started till I was like 20 or 21, and I was working as an intern for Yamaha at the time. A marketing coordinator in their snowmobile group, and some of my coworkers there helped me get started in road racing. It was something I had always wanted to do, but unlike some of these other parents in the paddock, my parents were very against it, thought it was unsafe and I would get hurt and all of that. So I had to wait till I was out on my own. But yeah, I was working at Yamaha, so I got on Yamaha right away and have been on there my whole career. So it's definitely going to be an exciting and big change for me this year, jumping onto the Suzuki. Really excited to be with Disrupt again this year and have them, supporting me and helping me out so much. First time in my career, I'm not going to be on a really old, fully hand-built bike by myself. Now we'll have a lot more support and some more competitive equipment, so it's really exciting.
Okay, we'll get back to the motorcycle part in a minute, but Sean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this guy has to be the smartest guy in the paddock. Definitely the most degreed. I guess that's not really a word, but anyways, he has 2 master's degrees, one in engineering and one in administration, and that's not a real common thing in our paddock from the racer side anyway. So how did that evolve, Carl?
Well, ever since I can remember, I guess the first time I ever saw like motorcycle road racing, I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and I always wanted to do it, but yeah, my mom was very against it. So I basically just put a plan together in my head of like, I'm gonna go do this. I don't care if my parents are for it or what. So as soon as I turned 18, like I went to a college that was a co-op college, so I could work and go to school at the same time. And my thought was, this would help me raise some funds to start racing, and then I would go to school for road racing related degrees, so I could hopefully get a start in road racing. So for me, that was engineering, get the background on working on bikes and how they operate and all of that, because at the time I had 0 wrenching experience or anything like that, and I knew getting started I would need that. So I wanted to understand the chassis dynamics and everything like that, so I could set up a road racing bike. And then I also decided to get, a master's of business administration to help with the, whole running the business, road racing business aspect of it, get some marketing experience and a business mindset, so I could put together budgets and appropriate planning and everything to basically try to get into the road racing game. And, I continue to work on various engineering jobs to help support my road racing career and pay for it all, until now I've, recently gotten to a point where it's finally all paying off. And now I've got, full ride in the MotoAmerica Championship. So it's great to see my dream come into reality now.
Well, Carl, I mean, you certainly put in your dues, but I want to talk a little bit about this engineering aspect, because I knew when I met you that that was one of the reasons I liked you. And I think my dad was a mechanical engineer, retired now, but whether it's Richard Stanboli or Matt Spicer with RoBem Engineering, or Steve Scheibe, who's a well-known engineer and patent holder who used to be with Harley Davidson and has his own team now, and there's you. I know that you guys absolutely love the mechanical aspects of motorcycles, don't you? I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I've always considered myself somewhat of like a scientist, and putting on my mad scientist hat and wrenching on these bikes and trying to find new ways to make them faster within the rules is exciting and fun to me. And when I was really getting started, I didn't always believe that I could maybe be a professional road racer. So I was also kind of operating under the plan that, maybe I could just be a test engineer and ride bikes for a living, or, like lead a race team, right? Or be like a lead mechanic for a race team. So I got really into the engineering side, and I really enjoyed physics when I was going to school. And math came pretty easy to me. So it just seemed like a natural fit. All those guys you mentioned were good inspiration for me. Also, like Eric Buell, I remember he was a racer and got his engineering degree, and was a huge engineer for Harley, and just seemed like and I was also inspired by some people from like the car industry, like Carroll Shelby, like racers, engineers, designers. And I thought, why not go to school for it, get some experience. And I've always thought it would put me at an advantage having the full understanding of the bike, in addition to getting a lot of practice riding it. So yeah, something I enjoy. I like tinkering. I like pushing the envelope, both on the track or just working on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Carl. You know, you paid your dues for a while as a club racer, and now you're a premier rider, like you said. So you're realizing this dream. And I'm not trying to project your career or life too far down the road, but obviously it seems like this is you're going to have a place in our paddock because you understand the mechanical aspects of the bike. And there are so many guys, whether they're technicians or crew chiefs or owners of teams, that were riders at one time and did a pretty good job. I can think of one guy, Ed Sullivan, who's crew chief for Westby Racing. I mean, he still races an R6. I don't know if he's going to be in the Daytona 200 this year, but I know he's going to do some Twins Cup racing this year. And a lot of these guys who do the mechanical aspects of it also ride. So do you think that gives you an advantage to understand the mechanical aspects of it? When you come in, well, this year, I want to see what's going to happen. Are you going to be coming in and talking to a crew chief, and how detailed are you going to be? We always like to talk about what riders say. Is it like, you know, are they making motions with their hands and saying, well, it's doing this going into the corner? Or would you come in and go, I think it needs, you know, a half a turn of preload in the front or raise the ride height or something? Are you going to be that specific with your guys this year?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. That is the thing that I think is my biggest advantage to having the engineering background, is being able to communicate with your crew and your team effectively, because, you know, you feel something on a bike and there's some, you know, margin of error from what you're feeling and what's actually happening. And then when you're communicating it to the crew, there can be even more error just in the communication of those details. So when you have the engineering background and you understand how, you know, the bike works and how it's supposed to work, I feel like I'm in a better position to break down exactly what's happening to my crew and be able to make, you know, positive changes to the bike. So generally what I always try and do, I mean, last year I was doing a lot of work on the bike myself, and I just had my one main mechanic and crew chief, really, Jim Voppel. So him and I were always, you know, discussing what we wanted to do. But we'll be able to have some more support this year, a few more crew guys, as well as a dedicated crew chief. So really my plan when I'm discussing what's happening with the bike is I always try to just give, you know, my observations on the bike first, just get out everything I felt, everything I saw, and get all that out before I even start talking about solutions like adjusting the suspension in any way. Because I think it's important to really define what is going on and what we'd like to have happen after that, before we even start discussing solutions. It's like, you know, I think it was Einstein that always said if he was given an hour to save the world, he would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and then 1 minute solving it. So I always try to focus on, you know, defining what's happening with the bike. So I like to break down exactly where on the track I'm having issues, so like a specific corner, but then even beyond that, going into detail of where exactly in the corner, you know, is it braking zone straight up and down? What's the bike doing? Is it as I'm tipping in, entering the corner, what's the bike doing? Or is it at the apex? Is it, you know, coming off the apex on the gas or straight away? You know, there's, depending where you're at in the corner, you can be wanting the bike to do different things, or you can be feeling different things. And it's important for the crew to know what I'm doing when I'm getting these feelings, so they can kind of understand what the bike is doing as well. So once I've, you know, told them about whatever issue I'm having and where I'm having it, and tried to be as detailed as possible with relevant details, only then, after we've gotten all that out and everyone's on the same page with what I'm feeling, then we start discussing possible solutions to address whatever issue it is. And I feel like this approach helped me a lot last year, because I've never had data acquisition on the bike at all. This coming year is the first year I'm going to have it, so I'm really excited about that. But without having the data acquisition, you know, you're going totally based off rider feel, and some very minimal data that we have, such as zip ties on the forks and shock to know, you know, how much travel we're using, or really it's just the max travel at any point in a session, which is one small piece of data, but can help us a little. So yeah, when you don't have data, it's harder to find that setup quickly. And I think it'll be a big help, but it was a big help for me last year, being able to break down exactly, you know, where I'm having issues and what we can focus on.
Okay, this doesn't sound like a nickname for an engineer. It sounds like a nickname more based on some sort of motorcycling skill or what have you. But how did we get to the nickname of Super Carl?
All right, that's a good question. So going back to my time as an intern at Yamaha when I was marketing coordinator for them, this was, right after high school. I literally, I think a week or two after high school, I packed up all my stuff, moved out of my parents' house, and moved to Wisconsin to start working at Yamaha. And I knew I wanted to get into road racing, but I didn't have any money, no job, or I just started this job and I never had a job before. So at the time, Nitro Circus was a big thing, and I was all into Travis Pastrana and all his antics. And also the movie Hot Rod came out with Andy Samberg, where he was an amateur stuntman doing all these stunts. And I thought, hey, I like motorcycles. I can build a ramp and I can jump stuff.
No.
So yeah, I raided like scrap yards and like people's garages and found some wood and started building jumps. And I bought a $400 Chinese pocket bike and just started jumping stuff. So I jumped my car first, and then we added cars and started jumping more cars. And I never had enough wood to build a landing ramp, so it was always just jump and crash. But it made for great videos, and I ended up posting them to YouTube and then selling them to a bunch of TV shows. I've been on, Ridiculousness, World's Dumbest Stuff on Wheels, and a bunch of other shows like that. And the money I made from selling those clips actually was the money that I used to buy my very first used road race bike, an 03 Yamaha R6. So it effectively kickstarted my career. And anyway, I got the nickname Super Carl because while I was at Yamaha, I was doing these videos, and my boss, Wade West, saw the videos at the time, and he started calling me Super Carl, which he was relating it to Super Dave, which he told me was kind of like a amateur stuntman that used to be on Saturday Night Live and used to do these crazy stunts and always crash or whatever and be fine. But he started calling me Super Carl, and it stuck in the office. And then when they eventually took me to the racetrack for the first time at Blackhawk Farms to see what road racing was all about, they introduced me to everyone at the track as Super Carl. And from then on, when I started going to the track myself, my R6, everyone at the track knew me as Super Carl. And I decided to just roll with it and, put the name on my leathers, got some stickers made up, and made Super Carl Racing. And it's been that way ever since.
It's almost a little dual personality, Sean, because when you hear him talk about the engineering aspects of a motorcycle and what it takes to work on a motorcycle and make a motorcycle work, it doesn't sound like the same guy that would jump stuff off a ramp.
Oh, well, I'll show you the physics calculations I did. I always made sure I would clear the cars.
I'm sure. I have a question about, and correct my pronunciation if it's wrong, Stellantis. Is that your job now?
Yes, that's pronounced correctly, which, speaking of pronunciation, just want to make a quick clarification. My last name is Carl Soltisz. Soltisz, yes. Yep. So hopefully the MotoAmerica announcers will get it right. I think I heard it pronounced like 10 different ways last year. But yes, Stellantis, aka Chrysler, used to be Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, and we recently changed the name like a year ago. That's where I'm working now as an engineer.
Is that so? That's fine for you to? I mean, obviously, it's a job that allows you to go racing.
Yes. So actually, I've been working for Stellantis ever since I graduated with my undergrad degree. I think it's been about 8 years now. And recent, like, I guess maybe a couple of years ago, I had never really done a full MotoAmerica championship. I always just did a couple rounds. And it was because it was tough to travel the country while working full time as an engineer. But then COVID hit and my job went fully remote at Stellantis. So I've been, working from home for the past couple of years. And I thought that was a tremendous opportunity to to chase my national championship dreams. So the first year I went remote, I did the ASRA Sport Bike Championship for the first time and won that. And then last year was my first full MotoAmerica Championship and did that. And because I was able to work remotely, I could, fly to the track and then and work on my laptop when needed, and then just take, vacation day like Friday when we're on track for the first time.
Okay, Carl. So I got a bunch of I'm going to fire off a bunch of questions for you here. I saved a few up. And thank you for telling us it's Soltisz. I have been pronouncing that wrong. So my first question to that is, being that I'm a writer and I always am very interested in roots of words, and you're an engineer, you probably know this or maybe you don't, but what is the name Soltisz? I'm sorry, I did it again. What is the name Soltisz? It sounds like it's either the sun or the moon or something like that. Is that what it is?
I think you're probably thinking of
like a summer solstice. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's like the summer solstice. So that's pronounced solstice, and mine's Soltisz. So they sound similar. Okay. I don't know if the last name Soltisz actually has any meaning related to it, but it sounds similar. I do know that the Soltisz name is most often spelled without a Z at the end of it. And mine has that Z. And I was told by my parents that, like, my great grandfather, when he came over to the United States, they put that Z on the end of the last name for some reason. And usually they try to make it more American, but I don't know how throwing the Z on there made it more American. But that's where the spelling of my last name comes from. And I know a lot of Soltices without the Z, but I haven't met anyone outside my family that has a last name Soltisz with the Z.
That actually helps me, because I don't know why, for some reason, when I write out your name or type your last name, I always want to spell it Solticz. I don't know why, but I know it's SZ. So basically, if I drop that Z, that'll help me to pronounce it right. Although I think what throws us off is, I'm sure you remember Benny Solis.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So that might be why you put that T in there with the Z at the end, and it makes it still want to say Soltisz, but Soltisz. Okay, now that we know that, the next question I have is, since you have 2 master's degrees and you're just north of where I live, I got to know where you went to college.
So I went to college at Kettering University. Used to be called the General Motors Institute. Really big engineering school, one of the top engineering schools in the country. They started out as a school developing engineers for the big 3, General Motors, first of all, but it's a big automotive engineering school. And the great thing about that school, as I mentioned earlier, it's a co-op school. So when I was going there for my undergrad, I'd work at Yamaha for 3 months, then go to school for 3 months, and back and forth alternating for 5 years. And then actually, about 3.5 years into that, I ended up switching, started working for Honda in Ohio, where you are, and was a power sports design engineer for a couple of years to get a little bit more engineering experience before I graduated with my undergrad. And then I actually went back to Kettering University to get my master's degrees as well.
Well, that actually, I don't know if that's going to answer my question, but thank you for that. And I need to ask you, being from Ohio, of course, you probably know what I'm going to ask you next. And I'm going to use the term that school up north. Are you a fan of that school up north or of Sparty?
I'm actually an Ohio State University fan.
Wow.
Both my parents went to Ohio State. So when I was little, they raised me as an Ohio State fan. And I always enjoyed chirping my buddies that root for Michigan or Michigan State up here. So I stuck with it.
Well, we always hear down here, Paul, this is kind of funny. This digresses quite a bit, but we always hear, like, it seems like Ohio State people are more obsessed with, against Michigan, University of Michigan. And I'm not from this state, so I can say that, or the Wolverines. Then Michigan people are pessimistic or worried about Ohio State. They seem to discount them. Carl, do you feel like people up there do they get upset about Ohio State? Do they care? I mean, what's your take on it?
Yes, for sure. The Michigan-Ohio State rivalry is like Michigan's greatest rival up here, and all my friends I know that are into football get really excited and into the Ohio State versus Michigan game. Michigan State doesn't really care so much about Ohio State. I always joke with my Michigan State friends that my two favorite teams are Ohio State and whoever's playing Michigan. So
Absolutely.
I'll often root for Michigan State when they're facing Michigan. But yeah, it is a big deal up here. I will say though that Ohio State fans, I think, are a lot more passionate about the rivalry than the Michigan fans. But definitely, it's still a big rivalry for Michigan, and all my friends up here like to chirp me for my Ohio State fandom as well.
Yeah, you described that perfectly, and it's true. I think they do get pretty hyped up around here, especially since they lost that game this past November. But
Yeah.
Ohio State staying. But that's interesting. Wow, you're right in the belly of the beast up there as an Ohio State person, so that's pretty cool. So let's go back to motorcycles. I want to talk about your team a little bit. I want to talk about Disrupt Racing, and I don't know if I made this mistake in the beginning, but it feels like I said Infinity. It's Infinity Fall Protection. I might have said Infinity Protection Systems, and I apologize to Jesse about that. I think that's Jesse Wilke's company, isn't it, Carl? And can you tell us about how you got involved in Disrupt? You were with them last year.
Yeah. So it is Infinity Fall Protection, and that is Jesse Wilke's company, the owner of Disrupt Racing. And so how I got involved with them, it was actually back last year for the Daytona 200. I went to the 200 like I always do. It's one of my favorite races to go to. And I drove down there in my moto van with it packed to the roof, and I knew about Disrupt Racing and Jesse because I had seen him around the paddock, club racing and stuff. And one of my good friends and guys that I race with, Tony Stornolio, he rode for Disrupt Racing in the club level, and we'd always have good battles, and he's a super nice guy. So I was asking him about Disrupt and what his plans were. And Tony told me he's riding for Disrupt. And he suggested that I talk to Jesse once I told Tony that I was planning to do the full MotoAmerica season. At the time when I was down there in Daytona, I was about to do this full MotoAmerica season, racing out the back of my van, by myself, fully loaded, traveling the country and all of that, because that's what I did for the ASRA Sport Bike Championship. So he suggested I go talk to Jesse, and I found Jesse, I think, in the riders meeting down at Daytona. And I was initially just, inquiring if he could maybe do some transport for me for maybe some of the far away rounds. So we just started a little discussion down there. It wasn't anything too crazy or too serious, but then I had a really good Daytona 200. I found a lot of pace. And was qualifying pretty well. So I had a pretty good showing, despite having a mechanical in the 200 and not finishing high, but I ran a really fast pace and had a good battle in the ASRA Sport Bike race. So then anyway, Jesse gave me a call later, and, basically offered me to join the team and do the season with him, because he was planning to do MotoAmerica as well. And, Disrupt Racing colors were blue and orange, and that's always been my thing. So it just seemed like a real natural fit to me. So I don't know, it worked out great. We talked through some details, made it happen, and it was his first year in MotoAmerica, and my first year doing the full championship, but I had done wild card rounds before, so I was able to kind of lend some of my experience to him as he learned it, and then he was able to help out me a lot too with a lot of resources and just helping get to the track and everything. So it was a really good fit. I think we both helped each other out a lot and built the team up to enable us to, be where we're at for this season.
So I've never asked Jesse this, and I didn't get a chance to ask Hayden Gillum this, but why is that team called Disrupt Racing? Is there some reason for that?
Yeah, it's, Jesse will probably explain it better than I'm about to. I'm going to try and regurgitate it here, but it's essentially, Jesse wants to disrupt the series, basically. It's like he's been seeing what's been happening here in the States with motorcycle road racing. You know, it used to be a lot, I guess, bigger than it is currently today. And it's definitely going in the right direction now. Like the series is growing and everything, and it's awesome. But he wants to, inject the Disrupt Racing team into the series and start turning some heads, doing things a different way, getting good results, and doing well in the championship. And he's just, Disrupt is a way of basically saying he's going to come in and shake things up. And I think people have been taking notice of that. We had Hayden get on the podium last year, and we were able to get some pretty solid results. And I got my first top 10 in the championship, which was great. So, that's really the name Disrupt. It's coming in. He's a relative newcomer and just trying to disrupt the series and show people maybe there's a better way to do some stuff.
And I think it's apt to say it's disrupt Carl Soltisz a little bit too, Carl, because like you say, you got involved with him and your results were better last year. And from talking to Jesse this year, I mean, he was talking about he's providing the bike, you're going to ride it, so that's going to help you. He wants to disrupt your career and advance it forward and put you a little bit more on the map with the results. And he's disrupting it a little bit from the fact that you've been riding your own Yamaha R6, and I'm not disparaging the Yamaha at all. I mean, obviously it stands on its own with all the championships that it's won over the years, but you're going to be on a Suzuki this year. How do you feel about that? It's a pretty big change for you. And I know you've tested the bike, and just from your early days on it, does the bike feel different, and where's the potential in it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the bike definitely feels a lot different. There's a lot of big changes this year, not just in the chassis, but we're also changing, the suspension on it as well. I believe the plan is to be on K-Tech this year and on the Suzuki. So we had one test in December down at NOLA, and I've never actually ridden NOLA until this test. So it was my first time, so I don't have a really good back-to-back comparison on the R6. But I rode the bike, and a couple of things I noticed were the engine felt a lot stronger. It's a different engine builder, different engine this year. And also the bike seemed like a little bit more stable, kind of like easier to ride at that level where you're really pushing. Like you don't have to work as hard when you're pushing at that level. Like the R6, it seemed like you had to work. It was kind of twitchy maybe, and you had to really like throw that thing around. The Suzuki just kind of seems more stable, more planted at that speed, and just easier to ride fast. I also noticed the biggest difference to me was corner entry. It was, I don't know if it's the Suzuki chassis or the K-Tech suspension, but it seemed a lot more kind of flush with the front end as I'm braking into the corner, releasing the brake, and entering the corner. As I go to release the brake, the front end seems to not move around as much. It's more stable, more planted, and just feels kind of like more linear than the R6 front end. And it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity there to increase corner entry speed. And yeah, I would really like to try it out on a track I've been to before on my R6. So I've got a good back-to-back comparison. But so far it seems pretty positive. I mean, I've talked about these differences, but in all reality, the differences aren't as great as you might think. It kind of, it just felt like a bike to me. Like I hopped on it, I was able to go quick, and it didn't seem really all that crazy different. And I think it's going to be a big help to be on it this year, just because it's a newer bike, competitive equipment, whereas my last bike is over 10 years old. I call it Theseus, based on the ship of Theseus, which is like a philosophical question of, if you replace every plank of wood on a wooden ship, is it still the same ship? And that's how I feel about my old R6, because I've replaced every part on that thing countless times. So everyone asks me what year it is, and I say, who knows? But yeah, so it'll be good to be on the Suzuki that's new, well built, and doesn't have dented frames and things like that.
All right. Well, I've got one more question before we let Sean wrap things up. As a guy who finishes, it's an extremely competitive class, super sport I'm talking about, MotoAmerica Supersport. As a guy who finishes, in the top 10 and in the top 10 in the championship, when you're on track with those guys like Sean Dillon Kelly and Richie Escalante and the really, really fast guys in that class, and you obviously see them on track, whether it's in the race or whether it's, in qualifying or practice or what have you. Do you look at those guys and think, oh man, that they're just too fast? Or do you think, if I had a better damn bike, or, what goes through your mind with that, how far off do you actually feel like you are?
Honestly, so that's a great question. So when I'm looking at them on the track, I don't feel like, wow, they're so fast, I can't catch them, or oh man, if only I had a faster bike. Really, when I see them, I'm just focused on analyzing them and what they're doing, how are they doing it, what are they doing different than me? Because it's a great learning opportunity. You have these really talented, fast guys out there, and they'll pass me out, when we're qualifying or whatever, and I can latch onto them for a bit and get a little bit of a tow and see what they're doing in certain corners that's different than me, and then I can go and try that and see if it helps me. And just this last season was really my first full championship, so I had a lot of opportunities to do that, and I think that's a big part of why I got so much faster this last year. Every track I went to, I set a new personal best lap time, and it's having that carrot to chase and seeing what these top guys are doing, and then going out and trying those things and seeing what works and what doesn't. And last year I got to this point where there's this gap to those very front guys, but it didn't seem like that crazy of a gap to me. Like, I knew there was probably, at every track I went to, I'm like, okay, if I can clean up my line here, and push a little bit harder here, I'm thinking there's half a second to a second of just, improving my own riding that I can close to them. And then also there's the delta between the motorcycles, right? Like, maybe they've got a little bit stronger engine than mine, maybe their bike's working a little bit better because it's newer, and they've got the data acquisition so they can get to that optimal setup where they're not chewing tires right away. And it's like, you get that combination of the improvements I know I can make with my own riding worth, half a second, depending on the track. And then being on competitive equipment, maybe another half a second there. And it's like, boom, now we're right at that front running pace. So now having the Suzuki and being on some competitive equipment, I lose that excuse, so I just got to focus on my own riding. And I think, the new bike's going to help me be a little bit closer right to the front. And, we expect to be fighting for top fives, and we're really hoping to get our first podium this season, and, maybe even a win. We're going to be giving it 110%.
Well, this has been great, Carl. Paul, this is unbelievable. He quoted Einstein. He talked about Theseus, and he mentioned the Delta thing that we always make fun of Robbie Floyd about, because I'm like, what is he talking about? Delta Airlines? What's going on here? So I guess we better probably quit while we're ahead here, because I'm liable to say something stupid and make myself look even worse up against the very cerebral Carl Soltisz with Infinity Fall Protection and Disrupt Racing Supersport. Thanks, Carl, for having us, for being on and having us on. I feel like we're guests on your show the way it's going. Don't you, Paul?
Yeah, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. So that's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Really excited to be on the show the first time, and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and listen, one thing I want to say too, Carl, you made a point of reaching out to us and being proactive about being on the podcast, and we want all the riders to do that. That's how this stuff happens. That's how our riders' videos of their training or them on supermoto bikes or anything, that's how we get content to put on our social media and promote our riders, is for our riders to be proactive, taking active part in their PR and promoting themselves. And Carl, you're great at doing that. You've done that with Super Carl in the past, with getting on a team with notoriety and being a premier rider, and being on this podcast and showing what you've got, not only as a rider, but as a human being. And you represent MotoAmerica well, and we thank you for that. And aside from that, I also want to mention for the fans, please go on our website and look at our calendar and pick out the rounds that you want to go to. Our rounds, our tickets are now for sale. It's very easy to click on the rounds and buy the tickets that you want in whatever packages you want. And also Live Plus, our absolutely hugely popular streaming subscription service, is getting bigger and better all the time. This year, it's on Apple TV as well. So for the Daytona 200 and essentially 11 rounds this year, we're gonna Live Plus is part of it. And so come to our races, but also watch our races on Live Plus and also on our broadcast channels as well. So I'm just going to wrap up with that. And again, thanks, Carl and Paul, another great podcast for us. And thanks for being on with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, y'all have a good day.